Life Audio. Welcome to the Untangling Prayer podcast. I'm Rachel Wojo, and each week we unravel life's knots through prayer. Here you'll find practical wisdom and prayer encouragement to guide you through life's hardest seasons. Join me as we untangle life's messes together, one prayer at a time. Well, hello and welcome to the Untangling Prayer podcast. I'm Rachel and I'm so grateful that you are joining me today. We are going to dive into a most difficult and profound question about prayer. Every discussion is close to my heart on the podcast, but I believe this question has an extra place in my heart because the tough question is, how can I keep my mind from wandering while praying? Sometimes staying focused during prayer can feel like an uphill battle. You sit down to pray, but then you're thinking about your to-do list, the errands, or that one burning conversation from yesterday. This isn't a failure or a sign of weak faith. It's actually a chance to keep returning to God with intention. He knows our human minds are prone to wander, and each time we refocus, we reaffirm our commitment to be present with Him. One gentle way that I found to help myself focus is using breath prayers. On the inhale, we think, Lord, you are here. And then maybe on the exhale, we say, help me focus on you. So we acknowledge God on the inhale and we ask Him for purpose and strength or whatever our needs are on the exhale. Using phrases like this can center us and help us draw our attention back to the Lord when we're struggling to remain focused. It's also helpful if we look at every wandering thought as an opportunity to reconnect rather than looking on it as a failure. God is infinitely patient with us. Aren't we thankful for that? And He delights in every attempt we make to draw near to Him. So the more we practice prayer, the more natural it becomes to rest in God's presence. Prayer is about coming back to Him over and over, trusting that He meets us right where we are, even when our minds wander. And I'm so thankful for that. Thanks for tuning in to this segment of Questions in Hard Places. We'll be right back after a quick word from our sponsors.
At Thrivent, planning your finances is bigger than money. It's a way to support the people, causes, and community you love. Because helping you put your faith into action is at the heart of what we do. Thrivent, where money means more. Connect with us at Thrivent.com.
Thank you for listening in to that word from our sponsors. And now for our Pray More, Worry Less encouragement this week. In this week's segment, I wanted to focus on the story of Eliezer, Abraham's servant, who was sent on a seemingly impossible mission. He's supposed to be finding a wife for Isaac. He had to go to Abraham's homeland. And wow, I look at his story and I think, gosh, this mission may feel familiar to anyone who's been entrusted with something that feels like a daunting or unclear task. We find Eliezer's story in Genesis chapter 24, and it's a fairly long chapter at 66 verses. So I'm not going to read to you the whole chapter, but I wanted to highlight a couple of verses. So we'll talk about those in a minute. Imagine being tasked with finding the right person for a role that could change the course of a family's future. Eliezer, Abraham's trusted servant, must have felt the weight of this assignment as he traveled to find a wife for Isaac. He knew the stakes were high, yet he didn't have all the details or directions on exactly how this would work out. Maybe you've felt a similar weight, the pressure of carrying out a task or making a decision or helping your family or business in ways that feel overwhelming. When Eliezer reached the well in the hometown where he had been sent, he did what we often forget to do when we reach a certain point in our lives or at the end of our resources. Eliezer chose to pray. He asked God to make the next steps clear. And here's the encouraging part. God answered. God gave him the guidance he needed at just the right moment. Eliezer's trust in God's timing and wisdom allowed him to take the journey step by step, trusting that God would reveal what he needed to know when he needed it. Verse 15 of Genesis 24 begins, before he had finished praying. I love that passage so much because it tells us that God is on the move even when we have not turned to him yet. He already has a plan. And if you're in a season of feeling overwhelmed, know that God sees the weight you're carrying. He invites you to lean on him for every step. This story of Eliezer is one that really resonates with me because two other places in Genesis chapter 24, in verse 48 it says, before I had finished praying in my heart, and this is Eliezer saying what has already been stated in the passage, but as he shares the story, it's reiterated again that God was on the move before he had even finished praying. And then the next section, verse 51 says, as the Lord has directed. And I just love that. Immediately when Abraham's servant heard what the people had to say, he bowed down on the ground before God and he gave thanks. I just love all of this chapter. It's so encouraging to me to remember that you don't have to have all the answers right now, friend. God's guidance meets us in uncertain places. Eliezer's story reminds us that when we're willing to pray and release the control, God is always there. Just take your concerns to him and trust that he will light the way, even if it's only one step at a time. I pray that's encouragement to you today. And now for our answer prayer story, I wanted to share one from my new book, Desperate Prayers. This story highlights how God's faithfulness shows up in ways that we don't expect, even in the smallest and most practical needs. This answer prayer story comes from chapter 7 of my book, Desperate Prayers. I always pray before I go into the grocery store. One day, I asked God to give me wisdom, only to buy what I should and blind me to what I shouldn't. I asked him to help me not to worry about what we don't have and focus on his daily provision. Lord, guide me through the aisles, I said. Then I began my typical shopping pattern, grabbing the cart and checking off the list of necessities as I went. On that busy Sunday afternoon, when my cart was almost full, an elderly man stopped me. He held out a stack of papers and said, "Could you use some coupons?" "I can always use coupons," I said with a grin. "I hope there's something in there you can use," he replied kindly and walked away. I began to look through the stack and discovered a coupon for one item I already had in my cart, but found it was only good if I had 2 of that item. I returned to the aisle to grab another and met the elderly man once again. He handed me another coupon good for $19 off a purchase of $200 or more at that store and said with a smile, "Now this is one I know you can use." What that man didn't know is that I despise grocery shopping. Inflation is rampant, and feeding a household of 7 is no joke. While some might have overlooked the man or thought him strange, I heard God whisper that he still got the whole world in his hands, especially aisle 24. What a sweet affirmation of God's guidance and direction. Whatever you lack is what God will supply. This story of answered prayer is similar to many testimonies I've shared in my new book, Desperate Prayers, Embracing the Power of Prayer in Life's Darkest Moments. If you're in a season where you're wondering if God hears you, this book will offer comfort. Desperate Prayers is available now, and big news. This week, the audiobook of Desperate Prayers is now available as well. Order your copy at desperateprayers.com or wherever you buy books. Thank you for joining me on this episode of Untangling Prayer. May you feel the reminder that God sees you, He hears you, and He knows your need. Thanks for joining me on the Untangling Prayer podcast. If this episode resonated with you, share it with someone who could use a little hope. And be sure to subscribe for more. Until next time, keep seeking, keep trusting, and keep praying.
Our world can feel chaotic and uncertain, but we don't have to live enslaved to fear. Christ has promised me and you His peace, and throughout Scripture has provided powerful tools and practical steps to help us experience greater freedom. I'm Jennifer Slattery, lead host of the Faith Over Fear podcast, inviting you to join me and my team as together we learn how to starve our fears and feed our faith. Subscribe at lifeaudio.com or wherever you access podcast content.